With its huge banking on the oval, Daytona is known for keeping the racing close. Drivers will have a hard time breaking the toe, and that could throw us up for an unexpected winner tonight. Let's see if we get surprised as we get ready to watch round 12 of the Porsche Owners Club Series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel. I am Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Roush Racing driver Joey Atterbury. Behind the scenes is our director Zach Johnson, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. While Daytona's oval and road courses may be familiar to many, just in case you haven't been introduced, let's check out our track guide. Welcome to the Daytona International Speedway. While many oval fans associate this Central Florida track with mainly NASCAR, the road course has gained just as much worldwide fame thanks to it hosting motorcycles and sports cars for decades. In fact, the flagship road race, the 24 Hours of Daytona, has become a major draw for drivers of all disciplines, many eager to have a go at endurance racing. The stats make this place sound relatively simple, with 12 corners on the regular road circuit and 14 on the NASCAR version, both spread amongst 3.5 miles. Indeed, a majority of the lap is spent on the oval portion, where you fly along the notoriously steep banking. But it's easy to underestimate the challenge presented to the drivers. The infield portion begins with the scary kinked entry of Turn 1. Not only is it the fastest part of the track, but the transition from the banking to the flat tends to upset the car as you slow it down. There's also the bus stop chicane on the backstretch. Added in the 80s, this is a tricky piece of circuit that punishes a poor exit severely, with it leading back into the latter half of the oval. As you'd expect, the long periods on throttle mean that drafting tends to play a factor in the racing. It also means passing isn't usually too great of an issue if you have the pace to catch someone. The more difficult thing is managing to gap your opponent so that they don't ride in your slipstream once you get by. With half a century of endurance racing collected among these walls, it's not unfair to say that road racers have just as much claim to call Daytona home. Fans who come to watch certainly won't be disappointed by the high speeds and fantastic thrills it invariably provides each year. Perhaps one of the more popular tracks that you'll find here on iRacing, Joey. It sees a lot of action in sports cars.
I would say not just in iRacing, but one of the most well-known road race tracks, especially endurance road race tracks in the world, Daytona International Speedway. 12 turns, just a tick over 3.5 miles. As you can see, a ton of straightaway here. Big passing opportunities into Turn 1, also Turn 4, known as the International Horseshoe. Turn 6, the Western Horseshoe, and then also Turn 7 is that final left-hander going up onto the straightaway. Those are your three big passing opportunities, at least in the first area of the racetrack. Then you also have the bus stop, which is known as the Le Mans chicane now on the back straightaway. Another great passing opportunity. But when I think of Daytona, Joe, I think of top speed, managing that draft if you're out front or in the toe.
And we're going to see a lot of drivers having to do that today, no doubt. But before we get to the racing, let's mention our sponsors, which includes Porsche. There is no substitute. Find out more at Porsche.com. And Game Changer Wealth, helping you become a game changer with wealth. Contact them today at GameChangerBR.com or at 225-664-2565. As for today's event, Joey, it's also kind of your standard fare here in POC.
Round 12 of 12. Closing it out, we are in those Porsche 911 GT3R cars. Those are the GT3 spec, the biggest, baddest, hottest, fastest Porsches out there. 30-minute race is what we're going to do. Everybody is on a fixed setup, so it is all up to understanding what the car is going to give you, what the track can give you, and then ultimately shaving that lap time down.
And apologies, we do have one more after this. Last season was 12, but this season they have one more to go to at Road Atlanta, which will wrap it up. So this being the penultimate round, and Chris, is currently our quickest in the qualifying. Chris Walsh has been one of the quickest drivers this season, has taken multiple wins, but unfortunately is just shy of the amount of races that he needs to qualify for the championship. So he is basically a non-championship competitor at this stage and can only steal points from Cigar Dewan. But I don't think Cigar is going to be worried about that too much, considering he has a healthy lead and is honestly, I'd say, had a very impressive performance this season, Joey.
And also, when you have those, call it specialty drivers that come in and don't necessarily race the entire championship, I don't think they're viewed as anything other than a true competitor that you know is coming in that's a hot rod, and you are going to have to up your own game. So I think if you look at the other competitors out there, the other racers, they welcome these specialty guys that can come in and really up their own game when they do show up.
Looks like one of the only other drivers that is eligible that could have fought him was Arnold Roper. If I could say his name, let's call him AJ. AJ Roper, who is not here today. So he also is going to lose massive points, and he was already well behind. So not going to be much of a fight between them. BJ Fulton, I think, is too far back to do anything from this stage. He's also eligible for the championship, but just mathematically can't do much from here. So could be just a couple of victory lap races for Cigar from here on out. But Chris Walsh is going to do his best to stop that. Granted, he's just popped it into pit lane, and he's about 300ths off of Cigar Dewan, who has taken the pole position away from him.
And we are in that qualifying session. These drivers have quite a long qualifying session, but with that fixed setup, remember, you can't say, hey, I only want 3 gallons of gas in it. You're stuck with the whole tank when you start this session. So what I feel Chris Walsh might be doing is coming in, getting in that final set of tires, and then going back out on the racetrack to set down that lap time. But he's got to get it back out there pretty soon.
And of course, as always, we have Finn Woodruff, our pit reporter, down there on pit lane. We're kind of watching one of the drivers who've been quick lately here, Finn. Zamora there on the outside of John Momeyer. Kind of surprised to see Gabe Zamora this far down in the qualifying. Wonder if this is a track he just doesn't like.
Could be that or one he's not familiar with in terms of the setup that they're running. Given that it's a fixed setup, there's often so many different ways you can set up these Porsches for open setup racing. Could be one that he's just trying to get his feet under in terms of car track combination.
That's true. So maybe just still familiarizing himself, but right now he sits in 7th with about 8/10 to go to get up to our pole sitter. So not hugely massive at this stage, but certainly a significant chunk to make up in about 2.5 minutes. So maybe 1 lap left after this one. And Joey does look like he's trying to get tricky and use a little bit of slipstream.
Yeah, see, that's John Momeyer right in front of him. Now, this is a great tactic as long as Momeyer does exactly that. He pulls off to the apron, so Gabe Zamora got that toe down the entire, we're going to call it the back straightaway there into the Le Mans chicane. Just got to keep it nice and tidy. I do see him now. Timing and scoring is a little bit finicky here with 2 minutes left remaining. This should be his final lap.
Oh, but he's pulling off. He's not happy with it. And if he's slowing down now, that means he's going to be slow at the start of the next lap. So, yeah, that's basically it for Gabe Zamora's qualifying. He's just taking it off the course and unceremoniously dumping the car into the wall. Obviously, that doesn't affect him, as he'll just get a fresh one for the actual start of the race. Dylan Scott doesn't go quicker this time by, unfortunately, and this is the start of his final lap. Jad Duncan's going to be the next one to cross the line. It looks like he's on an out lap now. And Dhruv Chawla might actually improve here in this red and white number 12. He's showing about 0.3 improvement.
See what he can come up with as he comes through the tri-oval here. He's got a 145.3. He goes a 145.0. That jumps him up into the 6th position.
Nice little move for him. That's going to push Gabe Zamora down one even more into 8th position. That's going to be a hard day for Gabe, no doubt. BJ Fulton in the gray martini livery next across, currently sitting in 5th, fighting for what might be 2nd in the championship with Roper. Let's see what this one holds. Looks like that was also an out lap. Starts one last drive at it to see if he can go any quicker. And not seeing much improvement late on this one. Will Castillo, I think, is getting ready to potentially take the start of his last lap. I think he's going to be able to get there in time, but Dylan Scott might be our first one to get the checkers.
Got the purple Rexy coming out of Daytona turn 4, getting very close to the wall up there. And Joe, I'm actually seeing a lot of these drivers abandon their final lap here, whether they don't get the sector right. Daytona can be a very, very cruel mistress, because I tell you, if you miss that one braking zone, the very, very first thing you have to do on the racetrack for that lap, it blows it all completely out the window.
That's true, yeah. So maybe a few drivers knowing it's over well before the fat lady has sang. BJ Fulton's going to be the next one through then, and the number 82. And he is showing to be close to his quickest time, which is a 44.933. Needs to make up 700ths to catch Dylan Scott in front of him. He hits his brake markers down into the bus stop chicane. This is really the last actual part of the track. Did he cut the course there, though? No, it looks like it was fair.
It looks like it was fair, but it wasn't the best exit. You saw so much understeer, and here he is already given up on the lap. I do the 728 car of Jacob Abrams behind him. He is on what looks to be at least equal with his fastest lap. He's sitting in the 9th place right now.
Yep, and he's coming around now to that last part. In the 728, it's showing like he maybe had a bad run out of the chicane. What will it be? 45.605 is not going to do it, unfortunately. So that is everybody done for now, as Will Castillo. Now, actually, I take that back. Will did cross the line in time, didn't he?
He did, and I've been watching our timing and scoring, Joe. You know, it's a little finicky. It was showing positive earlier in this lap, so I'm curious. He's currently sitting at a 148.837, and he puts down a 149.5, so he will stay in 13th place.
Couldn't quite do it at the end, but that means our grid is now set. And as we said, Cigar Dewan is on the pole position for this one, with Chris Walsh starting next to him. Can he beat Chris? I'll have to check and see if he's beaten Chris in a head-to-head. I think he did in the Enduro earlier. Jad Duncan will start from a 3rd spot, as Dylan Scott will be P4. Then it is BJ Fulton in the 5th position, followed by Dhruv Chawla in P6, and Mark Rondeau starting in the 7th spot. Gabe Zamora surprisingly far down in 8th. Jacob Abrams, who didn't set a time in practice, managed to get himself into 9th in qualifying. Eric Oviatt, that's a name we haven't heard in some time here in POC. He's back, and he'll start in 10th. And then for the last 3, it's John Momeyer in 11th, Larry Haas in 12th, and Will Castillo rounding out your 13-car field here at the end. The track gets ready for the race itself. Pretty good conditions on the circuit here, Joey, at only 79 Fahrenheit.
It's beautiful. You know, I'm up here in the Pacific Northwest, so I would gladly exchange a nice, warm Daytona afternoon for what I've got out here. And I think the competitors like sitting in those race cars, seeing that sun coming down across the high banking here as they are lined up on the back straightaway, but not really any wind to speak of. And we look at the temperature, it's under 80 degrees in terms of the track temp. I think it's got plenty of grip for these drivers.
So I can confirm the last time that Cigar beat Chris Walsh on track was at Willow Springs earlier this season for round 6. Other than that, anytime the two have shared the racetrack, it has been Cigar Dewan finishing somewhere behind Chris Walsh. So what is it going to be like today when the checkered flag falls at the end of this one? So they line up on the back stretch, looks like ready to go. So pace car should peel off, lead them around this limited pace lap, let them go for the second to last time of the season around the iconic high banks of Daytona.
I think the key word you said there was the shortened pace lap. So here we are through the Le Mans chicane. We'll go up into the NASCAR oval and be right at Daytona turn 3, as we call it. And the drivers, they got to get into their game face mode already. When I think first lap at Daytona, my mind is already going into those first couple of hairpins. You got to make sure you've got the brakes and especially those front tires up to temperature, that you don't go understeering through the apex.
Yeah, here in the sports car world, often refer to them as NASCAR 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I accidentally did that during an oval race once and got some funny looks from the others for referring to NASCAR 3, because, Joe, it's just turn 3 when it's just the oval itself. But anyways, they are ready to go as they are lined up, and the pace car is going to leave them be, giving control to Cigar Dewan. He cannot go until Barney waves the green, though, even though he controls the pace from here. So he'll have to try and hold patiently. There it is, green flag early for Cigar Dewan as he now gets underway. Somebody coming up around the outside with a huge head of steam, but looks like he gets balked as they almost go 4 wide at one point. And we're going to have a bit of a wreck as cars get into one another down into turn 1. And unfortunately, it's just going to cascade to the back of the field.
I saw John Momeyer was the one with the really aggressive start. He was the one trying to go to the outside as we go through the first horseshoe on the first lap. I believe Dylan Scott was also involved in that incident as well as Will Castillo. But it's all Cigar Dewan out front. Chris Walsh giving chase. Jad Duncan in that yellow car third.
One of those that survived is Gabe Zamora. He's up 4 already, and we haven't even finished the first lap. Coming down through the western horseshoe now. Zamora behind Jad Duncan. Dewan leading overall ahead of Chris Walsh. Now we enter onto the banking for the first time at speed. Will we see a few swap arounds?
All about managing the draft. Even when you are that lead car, Cigar Dewan out front, you can look in the mirror. You can see where Chris Walsh is going, and you see him already starting to try to serpentine on the banking, try to break whatever draft there is there.
Seen a bit of it from Chris. In fact, he took a little bit of a poke, but it doesn't look like a serious one on Dewan. He'll stay behind as everybody cuts through the Le Mans chicane, trying not to get those slowdown penalties. And so far, so good, but that wreck certainly spread them apart.
Well, and especially you mentioned that slowdown penalty. That's what you don't want on the first lap. It tends to be a little bit longer, but here comes Chris Walsh. He is officially in the slipstream and going below the yellow line, Joe.
And I believe that is fair game since they were out of the banking. Once you're past that, you should be, I believe, allowed to go underneath there. Cutting back, trying to get aggressive on them. They make contact. They'll both be able to keep it pointed forwards, but the loss of momentum now means 2 cars swamp either side of Dewan. They're also coming together. Zamora fighting with Duncan. Zamora can't quite hold on as it's coming right back at him. Dewan retakes 3rd place, but he gets turned, both of them around.
Yeah, Zamora got into the back of Dewan, our pole sitter, coming out of the first horseshoe. You see all of the carnage. I believe that's Zamora that lost the rear wing on this black Porsche here, and Dewan still getting going.
That was super aggressive from Cigar, but it looked like for a minute they were going to be able to get away with it, but eventually it all fell apart between them. And as you can see, Zamora certainly looking like he's got quite a bit of damage, missing that rear wing on the number 2. Well, I think that has spread them apart at this stage, so we might have some time to take a look at a couple replays. Let's see if maybe we've got the opening incident spooled up. Finn, did you have a chance to kind of go over this?
I did have a chance to go over this. Taking a look, it was just everybody trying to fight for positions in the introductory and open T1 here. And one got Castillo just wrecking into both Oviat and I believe also Larry Haas, just narrowly avoiding behind that pileup on the green flag at turn 1. Yeah, sorry, I thought I had more, but that's it.
Yeah, just one more look at the first incident here. And nice little job from Jacob Abrams to try and tuck up the inside, get 6 spots here in the first 3 laps, and now race on the podium. Let's see if maybe, do we have the second incident as well? Yeah, here we go, Joey.
And this was just coming out of turn number 3, and Zamora, Cigar, Dewan, there just wasn't any room in between these two, and especially what happened after that turn 1 incident. I feel like maybe you could probably leave a little bit more room on acceleration, but I don't think he was expecting to turn Cigar. I bet you he was just trying to give him a nudge to push him forward, not turn him around.
Yeah, and it just kind of went awry, unfortunately. So Dewan in pit lane, and I thought he was going to take a spare car, but he must not have checked it because he's now taking repairs. And Zamora is still out there, so he's going to try and race without that rear wing. He sits in 8th. Meanwhile, Walsh has now fully inherited the lead and is ahead of Jad Duncan by about a second. And Jacob Abrams finds himself up into P3 and is about 2.2 seconds behind Jad.
There's actually a lapped car in between our leader and second place, and this is the battle for the 3rd place that you were mentioning there. And here's that second place car of Jad Duncan, and actually credit to him right now, he's hanging in that slipstream. He's right at that 1 second buffer, and here in iRacing you want to be right in that 1 second or closer. That's really where you get that effect from the toe.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's getting a bit of it right now, trying to stick with him as they come across the line to complete lap 3. About 1 second between P1 and P2. Have a nice little fight between Momeyer and Dylan Scott, as well as Mark Rondeau. This is for 5th here down into the corner. Momeyer, another one that did a good job of making his way through the melee and gaining, looks like 4 positions. I think it was up 5 before he got demoted just now by Scott.
And I was watching John Momeyer at the start, and he tried to make it 3 wide on the outside, but then you were right, Joe. He was able to clear the wreck all the way down on the inside, and here he is battling with Mark Rondeau as well as Dylan Scott here, which will be the 5th place position going through this turn number 5 here around that right-hander, and you see just trying to over-under is Dylan Scott, trying to do whatever he can. Now on the outside of the track, not going to work, but look at him try to put the power down, get sucked back in behind that number 11.
Great defense by Rondeau. And also, I wonder if Dylan's got to watch out because Momeyer's still there. He could try and sneak back by him if Scott is put out of position on one of those exits, but he's got a good run, and he's once again pulling in Mark Rondeau, who goes defensive down into Le Mans, comes back to the racing line a little later on, and feels safe enough to not have to try and take an alternate line, but it is looking stronger by the 08.
I see Dylan Scott really using more of those apexes through that Le Mans chicane, and now he is literally underneath the rear wing of this gray car, trying to pass Mark Rondeau. He's going to go to the outside. This is going to put him on the wrong side of the racetrack, the long way around turn 1, but it will be a braking duel, and it looks like he might actually clear him.
He is. He cuts down underneath to try and cover off a repass down the inside, leaves the door open a little bit, but doesn't need to worry. He was mighty enough that he is going to hold on to 5th. Also, I wonder if the lack of the rear wing is helping out Gabe Zamora a little bit, at least on the oval portion, because he's caught them.
Now, he is getting pulled along a little bit here. It's a little deceptive on the lap times, but yes, he is right here. He is on the back of John Momeyer. He did a 1:45.4 that last time around, which is actually a couple seconds faster than this group battling in front, and he's going to give John Momeyer a shove here into the horseshoe. See if he now capitalizes on the over-under, says, you know what, no, that wasn't the proper way around. I got to do it better.
Yeah, I think he caught the grass a little bit on the braking on his way into the turn. That maybe hampered him somewhat. They'll come back onto the oval, and he will get a very nice tow from the 6. Ahead of them, it is definitely separated between Rondeau and Scott. So this is where the fight is now. Zamora back where he started this race in 8th. Can he finally gain a position after he had gained so many? He's got the inside. Momeyer not going to fight him. He's going to give him the desired line and slices through, does the black number 2.
We'll watch how Gabe Zamora progresses throughout this race. I've been kind of trying to figure out the attitude of this car. It looks like it still has plenty of speed, but Joe, it doesn't look too stable on the brakes.
Yeah, unfortunately, no spoilers for Gabe Zamora today. He is going to try his best to do it with lacking a little bit, and he catches up once again to Mark Rondeau. It does look like that car is quite nice in a straight line. No surprises, but he's going to have to survive this part as Rondeau goes wide. Oh, and he's going to lose control, and into him goes Momeyer. Both of them around.
And unfortunately, you see Momeyer missing the front bumper now. Mark Rondeau, I think, is going to get off a little bit easier with that as John Momeyer gets it back collected, gets back out on the racetrack. But that's actually a pretty common incident here in turn one, Joe. That overshoot of the brake marker, you just get in too deep and then you find yourself in the really slippery, dirty section and it hook spins from there.
Yeah, so I've seen it a ton of times, and Larry Haas even went by John Momeyer, who is now missing a good bit of the bodywork on the front of his Porsche. So Larry up to 9th from that one, and I'm not sure that we'll see John Momeyer his best finish this time out, like I think he did last time at VIR, but I don't have the stats in front of me on where exactly he finished. Meanwhile, Chris Walsh has been kind of scampering away. Jad Duncan can't quite hang. He must have lost some of that toe because it's up to about 2.5 seconds.
He had a really clean line, this leader right here, Chris Walsh, through that Le Mans chicane. Going down to the back straightaway, out of NASCAR turn 4. I'm noticing 165, 166 miles an hour here for our leader. Looks like it pokes the top at about 168 miles an hour. I'm going to have to keep my eye on that black car of Gabe Zamora, see how much faster he is without a wing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Granted, we don't know if he has some other damage on the car, too, that might be kind of counteracting that in some ways, but it's at least got him up into the 6th position for now, as the 104 is looking a lot more spick and span there, at least at this stage of it. And Mark Rondeau is having to come into pit lane because of the damage he got from his incident.
And I can say that when I started racing Porsches way back at Daytona, now this was back in still the 996, 997 era, those rear bumpers, they actually had a lot of drag on them. So a lot of those teams, Joe, now it's not the rear wing missing like Gabe Zamora, but a lot of those teams would just very loosely fasten those rear bumpers. So after a few laps, they would just come flying off, and all of a sudden you had a few extra mile an hour on that top end.
Go figure. Well, I know we saw it as it was happening, but sounds like Finn was really able to get a closer look at things on that incident with Rondeau. So Finn, talk us through this one.
So I hopped into the roll bar, gets wide, tries to get back on the power to keep going through the corner, puts the gas too far into the floor and causes the rear end to just spin around on him. With these rear engine cars, once they get that traction broke and they start sliding off in a direction, you become a passenger. And unfortunately collected up the number 11. Yeah, Momeyer. Yeah, thank you. Yes, Momeyer with him.
Yeah, you can see the results as the splitter just kind of pops off there. Unfortunately, gets it going, but Rondeau has since taken that spare car, returned to the track. He is in 10th, and Dewan maybe has something to chase now because of that, although they're 16 seconds apart, so it'll be a little bit before he can catch up to him, if he can catch up to him at this stage. In fact, is Momeyer still going? Yes, Momeyer is still going. And Larry Haas has caught him, and now they're fighting for 8th position.
It's kind of just a little bit disappointing here as we watch Larry Haas and John Momeyer argue it out through turn 1. Get to see the awesome carbon ducting there with all of the radiator supports and everything on the front end of John Momeyer's car. But I was going to make a point about Cigar Dewan and his pace, because I look at our leader's lap time and what Cigar's Dewan's last lap time was. They are identical, Joe. 145.47 that last time around. Just a bummer to see the track position lost for the 501.
It's always frustrating when you know you're fast, but you can't show it, and it was a mistake on your part that cost you the opportunity to potentially try and fight for that win. It looks like Gabe does have a fight with Dylan Scott, though, in 5th right now. In fact, as we see them head down through Le Mans, let's see if he can get the shot off the chicane and try and pass him on his way to the tri-oval. It's looking good.
And it's got to be frustrating here because you look at the car, it doesn't have a rear wing. Can it get the top speed? He's going to jump out to driver's right side around Dylan Scott. Let's see what it's going to be. Oh, they are so close, almost banging doors, but this black car of Gabe Zamora on the outside, maybe just 1 or 2 more mile an hour. But Dylan Scott, let's see if he can jump on the brakes. He's going to have the shorter way around turn 1.
Scott's going to be able to fend him off and through the grass. Gabe Zamora probably not with the best handling car right now. Falls back a little bit. He'll have to try again later. But Dylan certainly giving him a run for his money.
I mentioned it's a little bit unstable for Gabe out there, and I think we kind of saw that right there on display into turn number 1 with the rear engine cars that Fenn was mentioning earlier. No rear wing on the back of it. You really got to wonder how much stability there actually is.
And if he even knows that he's missing it. I mean, I guess...
Oh, he knows. He knows.
I was going to say, in the end, I guess all that really matters is that he can feel what the car is doing. So there is the very distinct lack of rear wing. Somebody's got to work on those fasteners a little bit. But the car carries on, and Zamora about 6/10 behind Dylan Scott. Dylan, with that defense, really did a fantastic job to rebuff him because Gabe not able to respond as quickly as I thought he would.
And I think if you are Dylan Scott right now, you have to realize that, yes, Gabe Zamora might be a little bit faster in terms of pace, but he's driving a wounded car. So you just need to run your race, make him pass you nice and clean. And I bet you it's going to be a lot more difficult for Gabe Zamora than it is for Dylan Scott just to go out there and turn those consistent laps.
And that, honestly, that great run that he's got here has put him even farther away. The distance has increased on a part of the track where you'd think Gabe would start catching him, but no dice. We'll have to try and get a little bit closer than this to crack into the top 5 of today's race. The person who's really loving this all, I think, is still Jacob Abrams. He is still in 3rd. Sometimes you always have to wonder, Joey, in these sort of situations where a driver inherits a lot of spots. Sometimes if it's early in the race, drivers can run them down and it can be hard to play defense. But Jacob's still got 5 seconds over BJ Fulton.
And you know I'm a sucker for the data, so let's check the lap times here. A 1:45.66. And his best is a 1:45.60. So that tells me great consistency out of Jacob Abrams right now. And I also look around to the leaders, 1:45.4, 1:45.6 right in front of him. So he is there on legitimate pace. Yes, you might have picked up a couple of positions from some scuffles out there on the racetrack, but he's out there in 3rd and running the proper pace.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the last lap, the 1:45.666. He is going like hell right now. So he has certainly got a fire lit underneath him. We'll see if he can keep it up and continue to run away from BJ Fulton. I do think that Dylan Scott is actually running away from Gabe Zamora, too, because it was up to about 9/10 of a second, although Dylan just had a bad run through the chicane. And, of course, right when I say he's running away from him, it changes right around.
Yeah, I think Jacob Abrams might be playing some metal inside that Porsche, if you know what I mean. But you're right, Dylan Scott is still trying to fend off Gabe Zamora. And I think that this one is going to be here to stay. I think just because of the damage on Zamora's car, it's going to be a handful for him. And even if he does get by Dylan Scott, remember, he still has to hang on to it and push in order to stay in front of him. Dylan Scott, with the proper car out there, like I mentioned, he can just turn consistent laps and just have the car underneath him that he knows is there and can trust.
So Gabe's going to have to try and overcome some of those shortcomings and see if he can get there, make the pass, and then hold on to the spot on top of things, because it's not going to be over, especially if Gabe can continue, or if Dylan can continue to pull on him in the slipstream as they run around through Western Horseshoe, and that's certainly not going to help Dylan's case as he kicks up the dirt and the sand that is all around here. It is very sandy dirt off the track at this place, I can tell you that.
He actually got a little bit of a narrow run coming out onto the banking here. This might be the closest that Gabe Zamora has been, at least going into the bus stop. Now, the bus stop, or the Le Mans chicane, I should say, is a lot faster, a lot higher speed. So I think if you're Gabe, you probably want to wait, hang out right here, get through the chicane nice and clean, and you see the front end just wander through the first part of it. Pushes him back just a little bit further than what I think is going to be close enough to make a move into one.
It did not look like the front end wanted to bite, ironically. You'd think it'd be the rear end that he'd have trouble with, but car just washing out a little bit. Gabe keeps it within 0.2 of a second, weaving down to the inside. Dylan tries to play defense as they come towards the braking of turn 1. Will Gabe be able to maybe try and sneak up the inside? He shows his nose, but the door is shut by the 08.
I gotta say, in the back of my mind, too, without that rear wing, you can't have the best braking performance. So I feel like you really got to be up alongside, or at least presenting the car to Dylan Scott in order to really send one down the inside. But look at this, Dylan Scott with a poor exit out of the horseshoe. That's going to give the inside to Zamora.
This is what Gabe's been waiting for. He is up alongside him as they come into the braking, but he's on the wrong side of the Western Horseshoe. This is going to be difficult to complete the pass. Dylan knows it. He pulls back ahead.
Let's see if Zamora can pick it up here. It's all about the exit going out onto the banking. Dylan Scott actually runs in too hot. This is going to be the draft fest. This might be the opportunity that Zamora needs.
I am starting to get the sense that he's starting to rattle Dylan a little bit. We've been seeing mistakes here and there, and the 08 may have to give up the ghost at some point if Gabe pushes this hard all the way to the end. But it's not a for sure thing. Still a bit of a defensive move, forcing him to go to a very shallow line into the bus stop chicane. Can he get the car to stick? It looks like he will, and Gabe Zamora is back into 5th.
Yeah, but I think that Dylan Scott at least got out of the chicane properly. So I'm curious, is the car going to be draggy with no rear wing? I know the aerodynamic model always is a little funky whenever you pick up that damage. So here comes Dylan Scott, and he's closing it in at a pretty good clip.
Absolutely, and as they come up to the braking, he could try and see if he can outbrake him around the outside since he's got more rear downforce, but no, he decides not to, maybe cutting back, and the apex is chopped off by Gabe Zamora. And yeah, you're right, there have been situations, I know, where sometimes when they have had the car go faster in a straight line, losing the rear wing, they've actually given a car the meatball flag. I think the Skippy, this was a distinct problem, Joey, in the past, because people would game the system at times and intentionally try to knock the rear wing off to get a faster car.
Hey, you know what? Whatever shaves the lap time, the racers are going to go out there, find it, whether that's cutting curbs, doing whatever they need to whatever folders are in there, you know, making sure that you got the fastest car out there possible. But from this battle here, Joe, really good job. Gabe Zamora, I thought the car was more unstable than what it looks like right now. He's actually pulling away 1.3 seconds over Dylan Scott already.
Maybe it's just much more comfortable in clean air because he was having to fight with that car punching a hole for him. So that took away even more downforce, unfortunately. And in front of him, that is BJ Fulton that we've been seeing from time to time. It's about 2 seconds. It's not impossible that he could catch him in these last 7 minutes.
And when they were fighting and Zamora was in the draft, I actually think the lap times might have been just a smidge better. But we'll have to kind of see how it all settles out. And I don't want to jump up and down too much yet. But the last 2 laps, Joe, from our leader have actually been slower than the second place car of Jad Duncan.
Ooh, okay. So is Chris managing it from here? Is he just trying to bring the car home, knowing it's close to the finish? There you can see the distance between them. Duncan, I don't believe, he hasn't had a win yet this season. And Jad hasn't even been on the podium, actually, it looks like. So He is in dire need of a good result. This would be his best finish so far, even if he still finishes P2.
And he's got great pace all the way through. I mean, we're 25 minutes into this race, or almost 25 minutes in, and 145.1 that last time around, which was also his fastest lap of the race. So he is going the right direction.
Duncan's been racking them up, though. He's had 4 fourth places, it looks like, so far this season. And even though this is only 2 actual points and not eligibility for the championship, he is the highest placed driver without a podium right now, sitting in 8th position overall.
Be a tremendous finish. All he's got to do is hang on to it for a few more laps at Daytona as we watch our leader, the number 104 car of Chris Walsh, come through. And I believe this is the number 7 of Larry Haas, having some problems out of the second hairpin.
Mowing some of that grass, unfortunately, and I think just got a little bit wide coming off of the Western Horseshoe before he finally got it pointed the right way and carries on. He's actually still in 9th, but he did lose his spot to John Momeyer. But because of Rondeau and Dewan being sent so far back, he still has a healthy gap, but he's going to have to push because it does look like both of them are coming fast, especially Cigar Dewan, who's got a last lap was a 1:45.657, and before that he set a 1:45.1 his personal best, and that actually is just shy of the fastest lap of the race. No, excuse me. Chris Walsh actually holds it by a significant margin, but I think the 3rd fastest lap of the race, that one.
And as we watch our leader, I think he might have got the message there, Joe. Now, Chad Duncan continued to close it in that previous lap, but it looks like this white and blue car here is a little bit more hooked up this race, or I should say this lap. And from covering some other iRacing events, I know that some of these drivers, they tend to cool off their tires and then try to charge late in the race.
And you got to think, since Chris is no longer eligible for the championship, at this point, it's putting your stamp of authority on things. It's demoralizing your competition, saying, you might be fighting for the bigger picture, but I'm still faster than you.
It's always nice to be the big shark in the little pool, isn't it?
It certainly is. And yeah, that's kind of how I would describe him, since this is his first season. He came in and finished, let's see, he won his first race, actually, and has only not won one of the races that he has attended so far this season. Such has the pace been for the 104. Even with the missed races, he's still in with a shout for the championship if he would be eligible due to those missed races. But you have to attend so many before you are allowed to compete, unfortunately. So that's why he has not been allowed to fight for the crown here this season. But Chad Duncan would still feel proud, I think, with this 2nd place today, if he can wrap it up there in that bright yellow number 83. And considering the timing, I think we're going to be 2 to go next time by.
I'm not going to say that Chris Walsh has an unfair advantage here in the Porsche Owners Club, but he does have a ton of real-world race experience. Now, I know a lot of these drivers, they take the Porsches out, they do track days, they do some club events as well, but Chris Walsh is a professional. He does that out there in World Challenge. He drives a variety of cars, so I think when you're looking at the big fish out there, there's a reason why Chris Walsh is so fast.
And probably a reason he's a professional, too. It's been impressive to see what he has been able to do as we once again get a glance at that blue and white 104 coming around. And yeah, it does look like this is going to mark us at 2 to go, just barely, but he doesn't have the space to try and slow it up to give us one fewer lap around this time as he comes up to the beautiful tri-oval in front of the huge stands, improved over the last decade or so here at Daytona, called Daytona Rising, before they added these immense grandstands at the front. They are tall. In fact, up at the very top, you can literally see the entirety of this 2.5 mile oval.
Well, and here is Gabe Zamora trying to get the 4th place from BJ Fulton. Oh, a little bit of a door bang going into turn number 1. 2 laps left for these drivers, and Zamora does get around that number 82 car around the outside and won.
I got to give credit to the number 2. He has been very never say die today. He gained a lot of positions, saw them all fall and slip through his fingers, got back on the horse, has fought back forward through multiple cars, and earned this one the hard way. Fulton is still with him. He could try and deny him that 4th place. Not sure how much and how important it will mean to him, but it looks like he is really on top of it today and doesn't want to give this up lightly.
Well, and it's interesting, the battle of these 2 cars here, because BJ Fulton isn't giving up, but I think between the 2, you could probably take the front bumper off of Zamora and the rear wing off of Fulton and have one complete, real good-looking car.
Exactly. They need to combine forces a little bit here at the end as they continue to fight here along the oval on towards the backstretch. We have Chris Walsh coming through the banking with a mere 20 seconds left on the clock. He should cross the line with just a little bit left in his pocket and take the white flag. Yeah, it looks like maybe about 5 seconds to go as he crosses the line to get one more left.
And he does a 1:44.824, the fastest lap of the race as he takes the white flag. This is still that Fulton versus Zamora battle. They are coming to the white flag themselves.
And if you're Fulton, do you hang tight until out of the bus stop chicane? Do you try and get tricky? He takes a little bit of a peek down into turn 1. I'm not sure if he's serious about this because it did look like he was tucked up underneath him, Joey, but it didn't seem like he wanted to try and make the move.
I think, unfortunately, in the case of BJ Fulton, I mean, there's damage on both cars, but BJ Fulton has damage on the front and the back end of the car, and he's suffering on the top speed because of it. It's going to be really difficult for him.
That's true, yeah. So maybe he can't pull the snipe. Maybe he's going to have to get real tricky because when he goes by, he's going to be punching a real dirty hole in the air. And as they come up to turn 6, we'll find out soon because they are just now approaching the banking.
See who gets the better run out of that final turn in the infield, and actually Zamora is able to put the power down quite nicely, kind of pushes out an arm's length gap over BJ Fulton.
And up in front of them, Chris Walsh is now on to NASCAR 3 and 4. He put it on the front row, wasn't quicker than Cigar Dewan, but it was Cigar Dewan making mistakes, and Chris Walsh picks up the pieces and takes a dominant victory here in the penultimate round of the Porsche Owners Club Series.
Great race from that 104. Looks like Jad Duncan will cross in your 2nd place. Jacob Abrams finishing 3rd, but let's see. Can BJ Fulton use the draft right here, Joe?
Maybe not. I think you're right. I think you're right that he does not have the top end speed, and Zamora will grab 4th in the end. Also, Jacob Abrams on the podium today has got to be thrilled with that one, along with Jad Duncan with his best ever finish of 2nd place. As the last of them come to the line, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews, so stick around. Welcome back to Daytona International Speedway. With an excellent race for Chris Walsh and maybe a bit of frustration for others, Chris takes another victory, and I believe this is number 6 on the season for him. Jad Duncan with his first podium, taking second here today. After, we should mention, starting from third. So Jad deserves credit there. He was very fast today all around, even though he had maybe a bit of help, people getting out of the way for him at the start, I guess you could say. Jacob Abrams finished third after starting ninth. Gabe Zamora went from 8th to 4th, but it was not a straightforward race for him, who had to climb up and down the order a couple times. BJ Fulton gets a top 5 ahead of Dylan Scott in 6th. Eric Oviatt, a little bit quiet after he may have gotten some of that opening problems down into turn 1. He managed to get himself up into 7th with John Molmeyer. I think possibly his best finish of the season there in 8th. Larry Haas was 9th, and Mark Rondeau wound up in 10th. Cigar Dewan, frustration, not how he wants to end this season, but he might still be in a good spot in terms of the championship there from 11th, as Drew Trala was 1 lap down in 12th, and Will Castillo was a DNF today. Does look like we have Jad Duncan ready to talk to us. Why don't we have a chat and see if he's thrilled with this result? Jad, not on the podium all season long until the penultimate round. Better late than never, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a good way to near the finish.
Absolutely. And, I'd mentioned it. This race saw a crazy start, and there were some drivers that managed to pick up some positions from that, but you weren't one of those. You qualified in third, so you were just straight fast today.
Yeah, I think I got lucky. A few people didn't show up. Then I put a decent lap in. I actually went out for my qualifying, and my VR went crazy, so I didn't get to do my real qualifying lap. So I was very happy starting third, and I'm getting lucky not to get it taken out from behind like a lot of people did.
Well, that's a real testament to your speed then. If you couldn't really complete the qualifying. What did it feel like, though, trying to chase down Chris? Did it feel like, from your perspective, he was toying with you, or do you think that the fact that you stayed within about 3 seconds was legitimate?
I think there was a little bit of toying because I was reeling him in about 2/10 a lap for quite a while. And then as soon as I got down to about 2.5, he all of a sudden pulled out a crazy lap and was back up to 3. And that's when I knew, it wasn't going to happen. And second was going to be the best I could do and just be happy with it.
Well, congratulations on a P2. That is a well-earned first podium and an impressive drive, sir.
Why, thank you.
That was Jad Duncan in the number 83, finishing second here today. And also with his first podium, Joey has caught up with Jacob Abrams.
Well, Jacob Abrams, congratulations on the third place finish.
Good to be back on the podium. It's been a while.
Yes, so it's nice to be standing up here spraying some champagne for sure. Talk us through the race a little bit. I know that you had a little bit there in turn 1, but then ultimately went up and passed Jad Duncan. Or I'm sorry, finished third there behind Jad.
Yeah, I didn't really have any practice time, so I kind of came into qualifying cold, and I didn't qualify particularly well. But I know the track pretty well, so I knew that if I could make some moves in the first couple corners, it would set me up pretty well for the rest of the race. And I think I got into the back of somebody a little bit in turn 1, but I'm not really sure exactly what happened. But I gained a lot of spots the first couple corners, kind of doing what I had planned, and just kept my head down. And once I got a gap over BJ, who was in 4th behind me, I just kind of started to take it easy from there and just maintain the tires without trying to push too hard and put the thing in a wall.
And so that's what I was going to ask you next is, when you're out there kind of running a lonely race by yourself, how much are you pushing it versus managing the tires?
I was pushing pretty hard when BJ was behind me at first, because I knew I needed to get him out of the tow and out of the draft. But as soon as I had like about a 1.5-second gap, I really backed off a lot, because not having practiced much, I knew there was a high probability of, making a mistake if I was pushing too hard, trying to catch the, guys in first and second. So I figured it'd be better off just maintaining the tires and driving a bit conservative to just maintain that third place at that point.
Well, congrats on the podium. You can spray some virtual champagne. Anybody you want to thank?
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys for putting this on, and the POC for running the event, and Works 2 Motorsport. All right, thanks, guys.
Well, thank you for coming out and racing. And that was the driver of the 728, Jacob Abrams.
Meanwhile, our winner, Chris Walsh, has rocked up to talk to us. And Chris, congratulations on another win. We have to ask, Jad theorized that maybe you were toying with him. Were you dangling the carrot?
I don't know if I was dangling the carrot. I think I was just managing the tires. I drove really hard to break the draft gap. I mean, that's the name of the game at this track. So I built a lot of heat in the fronts, and so I was just trying to like manage the heat in the fronts and just see if he would catch up. He was doing a good job in the middle of the race, but the car came back to me a little bit at the end, so I was able to turn the heat back on.
And you didn't take the pole position on this one. Were you a bit surprised that Cigar snatched that from you?
No, I mean, he's always good in qualifying. I honestly didn't really do a great job maximizing my push lap, so I didn't think that I had a very strong lap time. I should have really been in like the 44 ones, but I didn't pull it off this time. So full credit to him. He definitely beat me just straight up.
Unfortunately, we didn't get to really see the fight carry on through the whole race. He got caught up in an incident there with Zamora after he got passed by you and tried to pass you back. If he had managed to stay up there, I mean, do you feel like it would have been a real problem, like you said, since these cars tend to really pull each other along on the oval?
Yeah, I mean, we're running the high downforce endurance setup, so it is a pig on the straightaways. It's just so slow. So it's a big deal to be behind somebody because they're punching such a big hole. So yeah, absolutely. I didn't know if making the move that early was going to make sense, but I figured I'd just see if I could run away from him and build a gap and get, break the draft. But ultimately it didn't make a big difference. He got caught up, unfortunately.
Indeed. Well, we got one more round. Will we see you at Road Atlanta?
Yeah, I'm planning on being there. So I'm excited. I love that racetrack. Setup in the car will be great there.
Awesome. That was Chris Walsh, our winner here today at Daytona International Speedway, which, of course, is going to wrap us up with a few thank yous to our sponsors, which, of course, includes Porsche. There is no substitute. Find out more at Porsche.com. And Game Changer Wealth, helping you become a game changer with wealth. Contact them today at GameChangerBR.com or at 225-664-2565. Thanks to the team today, Joey, Zach, Dougie, and of course, Fenn. Make sure to check out our social media website and our merchandise store. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a moment here on GSRC. Next time out, like we said, Road Atlanta will be Monday, December 18th for the last race of the season and the year at 11 p.m. Eastern. Be sure to check out our other broadcasts that we have listed on the screen. And until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.